What up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith. Welcome to another weekly reading wrap-up here on the Nerdy Narrative. That is simply where I talk about all of the things that I've been reading recently, just a few thoughts about each one, where I'm at in it, but really it's what I read, what I'm still reading, and what I plan to read next. Let's start things off talking about Eve of Snows by L. James Rice. This is my third book from my pile of 6 for the SPFBO competition, and I really enjoyed this one. Your girl here is a huge fan of immersion reading, so I did check to see if by chance there was an audiobook to accompany this one because I was reading it on my Kindle. To my delight, there was, but let me just go ahead. If you were all getting excited about it, don't get the audiobook. The chapters didn't line up, and I just thought perhaps maybe part of the prologue or something like that had been counted as a chapter for the audiobook instead of actual chapter 1. But as time went on, I noticed that there were getting to be bigger and bigger discrepancies, and what was actually happening I didn't discover until I was finally able to immersion read, which is to listen to the audiobook while I'm reading along physically. I discovered what the culprit was. There are chapters missing. How many? I'm not quite certain. I know for sure there were 2 because I kept trying to find where I left off in the Kindle on the audiobook, and I was just never finding it. And I thought, well, maybe they combined it with another chapter, the one before it. Wasn't even there. So just prior to being halfway done with the book, I had to jump ship on the audiobook and just continue physically. One of my earlier notes that I wrote down in my journal about this one was how each of the different beginning chapters and the different POVs, they were like quilt squares. They matched color and pattern, but they just didn't connect well. I believe that is because there was some missing content in the audiobook, just flipping back and forth. That's why it didn't feel like it was fitting together well. When I axed the audiobook, I discovered that none of those issues were there. Everything was fitting together very nicely. I really enjoyed the magic system. I was really enjoying getting the different timelines and perspectives from the different characters, how it was fitting together, learning what was actually going on. It was just done really well. You don't get told everything up front. You're discovering it and putting the pieces of it together with the various characters that you meet. I really enjoyed that aspect. In fact, that's what kept me engaged and just made sure to keep me eager to keep picking that one up until I finished it. I really enjoyed this one. This might be my one that's gonna go forward. I've got 3 more books to read and then I'll have to make my decision. So since I kicked Eve of Snow's audiobook to the curb, that left a void in my life for an audiobook because my other book that I started did not have an audiobook to go with it. So what do? Fortunately, Libby came through with my hold for Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I have been putting this book, this series, on my TBRs forever, and it's just been the one that I've kicked to the curb if time didn't allow or if something else popped up that I wanted to read more, because honestly, Elantris broke me from Brandon Sanderson. It took me 3 months to get through that book, and it just really cut into me wanting to pick up Brandon Sanderson. I'm about 25% of the way through this one already. I'm just loving it. I love the charisma of Kelsier, and I'm really glad that I read the short story from the Arcanum Unbounded, The 11th Metal, I believe the name of it was, because that actually gave me a look at Kelsier, what his motivations were, what drives him to do the things that he does. Because so far in this one, if I had not had that story as a base, where I'm at right now, I don't feel his character has been developed enough to show you his characteristics, which might have been Brandon Sanderson's intent. He wanted us to not know for sure about this person. But I really like him. Vin, I feel, is a character that is used as a tool to explain to us the magic system in this book, which is allomancy. Completely fascinating. It's based on metals, and the different metals allow you to do different things. And then this morning, I've really gotten a chance to meet another character named Sayzed. I think I'm gonna love him a lot. The other book that I started this week that I'm working on is The Appetite Factory by John Gingrich. I'm just a little bit of the way in. This book, and I really can't think of any other way to say it, it's one to be savored. And I know that's a pun because it's The Appetite Factory. but the writing style of this author is too beautiful to read fast. I mean, you just have to appreciate the beauty, the intelligence, the clever way that it's written, but there's also so much going on that you have to just stop and think about it as you read it. Like, you want to keep reading. You don't want to put it down, but you slow yourself down because it's so good, and you know that when you get done, it's going to be one of those you could read again for the first time. But all of that aside about the author's writing style, let's talk about the subject matter. So this is the story of Leonard Lundell. Leonard works for a public relations company in Manhattan. He is in the business of crisis management, meaning if a company, business has some sort of scandal erupt, his job is to step in and manage the conversation. He protects the reputation of the company. The author goes into detail about how this works. We don't just get told that's what he does and then he just does it behind the scenes and we have this other story that we focus on. No, we are in this man's job, and I found it fascinating. I don't know if the author has ever actually done this or if he just did extensive research, but it is just like I'm learning stuff here. It's actually very, very interesting to read about this job. So besides the writing style, besides just learning about crisis management in public relations, Leonard himself has a very unusual appetite. He likes to eat things that you're not supposed to be eating. In an opening scene, he ends up eating several pencils. And while he's eating the pencils, it describes how he's eating them, how they splinter apart, but he talks about it in such a way that it's like he is a connoisseur. He's like, yes, I'm getting hints of cedar and lemon and, something like that. It's like you're watching your favorite cooking channel on YouTube. It is so good. I've really been enjoying that one. And then to check in on the Stephen King short story Read Along, I have read The End of the Whole Mess and Suffer the Little Children, both of which I really, really, really enjoyed. The End of the Whole Mess is one that when you start reading it, it is really predictable, but you're just not sure how you're going to get from point A to point B, and it's the journey that is the interesting part. It made me think back to when I read Flowers for Algernon in high school, and I really enjoyed that story, even though it makes me cry. Every time I've ever read it, it makes me cry. It's a story about brothers. One of them is a genius, and he is determined to find a way to make the world better. And in his research, he comes across this town, I want to say it's in Texas, this phenomena where it's literally something in the water where people just get along. There hasn't been any crime in decades. And so he is setting about and enlisting the help of his brother, trying to replicate this on a grander scale for the world. It's really good. Now, Suffer the Little Children is going to be on the other side of the scale towards the horror. I'm just going to tell you, if you have children and they smile at you after you read that short story, it's going to make you very uncomfortable. I absolutely loved it. So far, this collection has started out just absolutely stellar. I am so excited to keep going. And then another collection that I have finished all of the short stories. What I have left is a novella called Harmony. I am going to try and get that read this week, and I will finish up this entire book, and I'll be able to tell you about the book in its entirety. As far as all of the short stories contained in this collection, I believe there are 10. They are absolutely fantastic. All 10 are a hit. I enjoyed them all for different reasons. You have to respect when an author can make you laugh, they can make you sad, they can scare your pants off by taking a childhood fear and just putting a little bit of a horror twist to it, or just expanding on that fear that you had as a child. When they can just reach through those pages and touch your heart and make you cry. It's just, it's a great collection. I just don't see any way that I'm not going to love the novella. But I will try to get that novella read this week so I can sit down and write my review for this collection. But this is one, you all that are making lists for your spooky reads coming up for fall, this one needs to be on there for sure. I also found time to sneak in another episode of my favorite cosmic fantasy serial, A Mini Tale. I've read, I want to say it's episode 15, might be 16, but 15 sounds right. It's called Hyperland and Kaiserrad City. I believe this one is a 2 or 3-parter, and it is about racing. Opalon finds himself on a planet in a city where they have these races, and it turns out one of the contestants suffers from severe dehydration because of the type of being that he is. And Opalon steps up and is like, I think I can help you. I can't wait to see where this one's gonna go. It feels like it's gonna be one of those fun, feel-good types, but of course you can never tell where the next story is going to take you with this series. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what happens in part 2 with that one. And that'll do it for all of the things that I read and what I'm still working on. Now, once I finish either Mistborn or The Appetite Factory, it's going to be time to get started on my first Riley Sager book, The Last Time I Lied. This is our selection for the month of July for the Wine and Crime Book Club that I host. Our live show is coming up on July 30th at 1 p.m. Eastern, so if you have read this book and you want to come see what the book club thinks about it, definitely join us here on The Nerdy Narrative. But I'm excited for a multitude of reasons. I really like the premise of it. I'm excited to try a new author, especially Riley Sager, because there seems to be a lot of fans for this fellow. And so I'm eager to see how I'm going to feel about them, the writing style, method of storytelling, especially when it comes to thrillers. So I'm looking forward to getting started on this one and checking with you guys to see if you can get this old heart racing. And I think this is going to be the only one I'm going to add to the mix for this week, because between The Appetite Factory, Mistborn, and this one, I don't foresee myself finishing all of those and having time to start another book. But if I do, it'll be The Lady of the Mark by Alex Hansen, which will be the 4th book of my pile from SPFBO to try and see how I like that one for the competition. Now that you've heard all about what I'm reading or getting ready to read, what have you all been reading this week? I know that there are a ton of readathons happening in July, but yesterday ended the annual Summerween Readathon, which is a week-long readathon where we bring Halloween to summer. Were any of you able to participate? What did you read? I did not get a chance because I just didn't get my books finished in time to jump in, and I didn't plan ahead. I completely forgot about it. Next year, I've already got it on my calendar so I don't forget. I am totally doing Summerween. Guys, I am going to drop off here and get back into The Appetite Factory. Thank you all so much for joining me here today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, a wonderful weekend, and I will see you back here on Monday.